Greetings, citizens of Earth. My people have developed technologies which allow us to throw off our physical forms and travel great distances in the blink of an eye. We are in dialogue with your leaders to help the human race survive its infancy, for we believe in you.
It's the Fire Officer's Guide to Disaster Control and said to be found in firehouses across the U.S. The book covers everything from fires to floods, but it's chapter 13 that takes an unusual twist in firefighting techniques titled Enemy Attack in UFO Potential.
Today, a group of scientists overseas say that world governments should start preparing an action plan just in case Earth is contacted by aliens. They claim that a branch of the UN should be given responsibility for what they call a supra-Earth affairs and come up with a detailed response for if or when the extraterrestrials arrive.
Today, from science fiction to science fear, news buzz among some scientists that if aliens do exist, that they're mostly nasty, resource-consuming locusts that would stop at nothing to take what they want and destroy anyone in their way.
There have been polls conducted, Gallup polls, one poll called the Roper poll. The results were extrapolated and sent to over 150,000 American GPs, medical practitioners. That basically said it's almost at epidemic proportions. They estimate that up to 4 million Americans may have had an alien abduction experience, as they believe. And then you've really got to wonder, why is the nature of it so deceptive? You know, if they're really here to help us, as some of these contacts claim, you know, why do they go around acting deceptively? Why do they stealthily abduct people in the middle of the night? And, you know, when I say it was confronting, there was some subject matter that was particularly disturbing. You know, people claim they've been taken onto a spaceship and probed in all parts of their bodies. There are sexual encounters. There seems to be some sort of almost ritual abuse that's going on.
Increasingly, I felt as if I were entering a struggle that might even be more than life and death. It might be a struggle for my soul, my essence, or whatever part of me might have reference to the eternal. There are worse things than death, I suspected. So far, the word demon has never been spoken among the scientists and doctors who are working with me. Alone at night, I worried about the legendary cunning of demons. At the very least, I was going stark, raving mad. I felt an absolutely indescribable sense of menace. It was hell on earth to be there in the presence of these entities, and yet I couldn't move, couldn't cry out, couldn't get away. I lay as still as death, suffering inner agonies. Whatever was there seemed so monstrously ugly, so filthy and dark and sinister. Of course they were demons, they had to be, and they were here and I couldn't get away. One of the main topics of interest the New Age movement has harnessed through the infiltrating of the Truth movement has been on the topic of UFOs and ETs. Many of these folks, like David Wilcock, David Icke, Jordan Maxwell, and many others, have in fact verified the concept that the UFO phenomenon is not necessarily flesh and blood beings, but are a race of highly evolved spiritual entities who have attained what we refer to as godhood and power over the elements of nature and physics of which we are currently limited to. This is eerily similar to the sacred promise given to the inner members of the New World Order. It is also the same concept being promoted by transhumanists and the road to attain singularity and human immortality. According to many researchers in the field, and even the people who have directly experienced this phenomenon for themselves, all seem to agree that there is a spiritual element driving this phenomenon. it is clear that there is a metaphysical nature to the UFOs and the alien abductions themselves. Furthermore, the startling similarities with the phenomenon with the occult and other historical, mythological accounts of direct contact with demonic entities should be alarming. Jack Valet alludes to this concept, stating, quote, "The symbolic display seen by the abductees is identical to the type of initiation ritual or astral voyage that is embedded in the occult traditions of every culture. The structure of abduction stories is identical to that of occult initiation rituals. The UFO beings of today belong to the same class of manifestation as the occult entities that were described in centuries past." End quote.
Are we talking about aliens from foreign planets, or are we talking about demons?
Well, first of all, I don't believe that even J.Allen Hyde and Jacques Vallée concluded they're not intergalactical for a number of good physical reasons. We believe they're hyperdimensional, they're demonic. They also pretend to be something they're not. That means that one of their tools is deceptions. And so that gives us a perspective of where they stand biblically. I believe that they are real today and that they are demonic in their root purpose.
The messages being received are deceptive in nature. They will tell you things like, well, you know, we've come from Venus or Mars. In the 60s, that was the messages. Well, we now know that's impossible. Now they say they come from Sirius or Orion or Zeta Reticuli or somewhere far off, where we can't test those claims. And that's the problem. And some of the stories they've told us, like that, we know to be demonstrably not true. And if someone comes to you, Chris, and tells you a story and does all these things and says, I'm here to help you, but then does brutal things to you and then lies to you, then I don't think trust is a good place to start.
Aleister Crowley was known as the wickedest man in the world. He was a master occultist. He actually changed the spelling of his name in order to make its numerical value total 666. He was also known as the Beast. In January through to March of 1918, Crowley began a series of magical workings called the Amalantra workings in furnished rooms in Central Park, New York City. His plan was to contact beings in other dimensions. At least one such being was manifested. It came through some kind of a portal that he opened. A portal is something that was magically, it created a tear in the fabric of time and space and allowed these creatures through. The entity that came through called itself Lam, L-A-M, not L-A-M-B, L-A-M. Lam is a Tibetan word for the way. There's only one way, friends. You know what his name is? Jesus. That's right. That's right. Well, Crowley drew a portrait of Lam. Later, Crowley left the picture to Kenneth Grant, who was his successor. And Kenneth Grant said this about Lam. He said he is a great old one whose archetype is recognizable in accounts of UFO occupants. So this is an occultist saying Lam is identical to the creatures that pilot the UFOs. Well, that is Lam. This is an alien grey from a UFO. Somebody drew, a witness drew what they had seen. Similar? Very similar.
At this point, I today do not know what it was in fact that we saw. He woke up totally awake and something picked him up, actually picked him up and set him up in bed involuntarily. And the moment he sat up, a light came on over his head like a little dim night light. And he looked up to see an alien's face with the typical alien's face with the bubble eyes, but it was glowing and you could see through it. You could see the ceiling through it as if it were a hologram of some kind. and it was glowing looking at him, and he said it slid across the ceiling, went across the ceiling, hit the wall, and came down to where it was even with him sitting in bed. It went through the wall and disappeared.
Then the medium said, "We have a very special surprise tonight for you people. A spirit will manifest itself openly here in a few minutes, and it's like a big gust of wind hit the building and right through the wall, and that translucent being seemed to come right out of the wall." The priest explained that when people believe in this business, they are actually opening themselves to be completely deceived by demon spirits, because it gives the demon spirits an opportunity to impersonate the dead. So who are they talking to? He says the friendly demon spirits that have always found over the centuries great delight in impersonating apparitions, departed loved ones, and persons of great renown.
People that claim these abduction experiences say that little grey entities enter their room in the middle of the night and they see them pass through the walls, or they see them enter through the ceiling. And then these people who believe that they've had some real physical experience claim they're taken through the walls. Now you and I know that can't be happening, but these people are having a real experience. But the question is it really aliens? Now my conclusion there is I don't believe it is.
As far as UFOs, well, a UFO is an unidentified flying object. And we're seeing those today. People are seeing those all over the place. And generally what they look like is just some kind of a white light. It's a white ball of light or something like this that's floating around in the sky.
Old houses, castles, cemeteries, old battlefields, orbs were showing up regularly at haunted locations. So, not surprisingly, many people came to the conclusion that these strange floating objects were of paranormal origin and a form of spirit energy. Some of the more extreme theories said they were secret government weapons and even probes from an alien culture.
In 1946, Jack Parsons, who was an astrophysicist. He was a co-founder of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in California, and his assistant L. Ron Hubbard, who later founded Scientology. They got together and they attempted to copy Aleister Crowley's work, but they wanted to call down the spirit of the Whore of Babylon. Now, this is all documented stuff. They wanted to call down the spirit of the Whore of Babylon and impart it into a human womb. For some, you can't imagine why. No one knows if they succeeded, but they apparently did open a portal to another dimension, and a portal that they said they were unable to close. Interestingly, from that moment on, they called it the Babylon working, by the way. Interestingly, from that moment on, the UFO wave, current UFO wave that we're experiencing now, began. And it began in 1947, a year later, with the Kenneth Arnold sighting. And within months, thousands of reports were coming in to newspapers and radios of UFO sightings.
somehow in the end times there's going to be again some kind of commingling, some kind of intrusion into the genetic DNA makeup of people that's going to be a contaminant that would be part of the end times. And that's why there's so much scholastic interest in this UFO business, in the abduction narratives and reports, and we may very well be being plunged into a period of time about which the Bible says more than it does about any other period of time in history, including the time of the Gospels when Jesus walked the shores of Galilee.
In Daniel chapter 2, we have the famous image of Nebuchadnezzar, and as he goes through it, the mystery is the iron mixed with clay. And when Daniel goes to explain what the miry clay is, he says, as for the miry clay, comma, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men. Now, I've had the exegetical experts confirm this. The they, he shifts to a personal pronoun, but the they has to be something other than the seed of men in order for them to mingle with us. Just grammatically, it requires that. So that leads to a speculation. What are we talking about here? One of the possibilities is that we're dealing here with something that's not the seed of men, namely Nephilim, hybrids. And that's a hint there that there will be a proliferation of hybrids at the end times, because that's what Daniel's talking about.
We're being set up for the coming great deception. I mean, when we read in the book of Revelation, when it talks about, in 2 Thessalonians, this great one-world religious system, it begs the question, how does one get 1.8 billion Muslims, 2.3 billion Christians to somehow change their paradigm, somehow change their worldview? We're looking, in my opinion, of some sort of an incident, something just so off the charts, unprecedented in all of history is about to happen. And what are we seeing? What are the signs all around us? The burgeoning UFO phenomena.
The generation now alive is privileged to see the birth pangs of the birth of a new civilization.
Here's what I know for sure. What I know for sure is that for the last 60 years during the modern age, there has been this alliance between the what I call the elite powers in control, because I don't like to say the I word. I like to say the elite powers in control, these central banking bloodlines that are dominating over the nations. And there's been an uneasy alliance between them and a portion of alien visitors, of these alien visitors that are malevolent alien visitors, let's put it that way.
How many's ever heard of astrotheology? Astrotheology. The Catholic Church is in the forefront of the alien connection savior. The idea that the aliens are going to come down and they're going to save us.
The Vatican's scientific interest in extraterrestrial life was publicly revealed for the first time in May 2008, when the head of the Vatican Observatory, Father Gabriel Funes, gave an interview to the Vatican newspaper L'Osservatore Romano. Funes made a series of startling statements about how extraterrestrial life is likely to be more ethically evolved than humans and can be welcomed as brothers. In his interview, Funes said that intelligent extraterrestrial life may not have experienced the fall and may be free from original sin.
Did the Vatican find alien life?
You know what? As sensationalistic as that question sounds, it's really not that far off from what we've seen in the news over these last days.
That is seldom discussed, but is very important to point out. That is the solution to help stop those who experience the alien abduction phenomenon. Joe Jordan, state-sanctioned director and field investigator for MUFON, through his investigation at CE4 Research Group, has discovered that calling upon the name of Jesus Christ during the abduction can make the experience stop instantly. On their website, ce4research.com, the mission statement states, quote, "The mission of CE4 Research Group is to share with the world the most powerful evidence known that exposes the alien entities for who they really are. The evidence is in the testimony of those who have overcome the experience, the oppression, the bondage, the harassment, the control, the lies, the deception that these entities perpetuate by calling out in the name and authority of Jesus Christ. Through this evidence of these testimonies, we will be able to help others, The world asks for this evidence and we will give it to them, end quote.
And what he shared was an experience, atypical, abduction type experience, where he had been taken, experienced being taken, and immediately panicked and in fear, and he himself, actually just being a brand new Christian, called out during this panic experience in saying, "Jesus, Jesus, help me." And when he did that, in an instant, the experience abruptly stopped.
The realization that it was beyond my physical, you can't bar the doors and lock the doors. They're going to get in. The only thing that saved me was my relationship with God and believing in Him and asking for Him to help, and He came.
I think I'd been saved a matter of days. I didn't know anything about spiritual warfare. And I'm lying in my room and I had this experience, but I was so excited about my newfound faith, I managed to squeeze the words out, "Jesus, help me," and I was being pressed against the bed and choked, and it stopped in an instant.
I said, "Jesus, Jesus, help me," or "Jesus, Jesus, Jesus." When I did, there was a feeling or a sound or something that either my words that I had thought or the words that I had tried to say or whatever had hurt whatever was holding me up in the air on this pole. And I felt like it was withdrawn, and I fell. I hit the bed because it was like I was thrown back in the bed. I really can't tell, but when I did, my wife woke up and asked why I was jumping on the bed. Typical type of experience. I hear this many times, same scenarios. I contacted these top researchers in the country. I said, "Guys, I've got a case here. I don't know what to make of it." I shared them the case. Each time I did, they asked, "Can we go off the record?" And I said, "Sure." I can't tell you their names, but I can tell you what they said. Each one of them said, "Yes, sir, we've come across cases like this ourselves, where they've been able to stop it using prayer or Jesus' name." I said, "Excuse me, how come we have never seen this documented? You're telling us otherwise, that it can't be done, it can't be stopped." First answer they usually gave us, "We didn't know what to make of it." I would have been fine with that. The second answer is what puzzled me and got me kind of angry. Because it was that one that I want you to hear for sure. They said we couldn't go there because it might affect our credibility in the realm. Over the next 10 years, I have now worked with over 400 cases of people that have been able to stop the abduction experience in the name and authority of Jesus Christ.
The most fearsome sign is how he called it. That will herald the return of Christ will be the return upon earth of the Nephilim. He refers to it as this unlawful offspring of angels and women.
I think unless a person has a biblical overview and has an idea and has studied what the Bible tells us about fallen angels, and about demons, and about prophecy concerning those things, and we touched on that, as in the days of Noah, so will be the Son of Man returns. Unless you come from that paradigm, from that worldview, I think a person is lost.